Hello, my name is Cameron Kelleher. I am a junior psychology major, and I'm also minoring in business management and writing here at Westfield State University. I'm in the honors program, and the presentation that I'm going to be giving you today actually is the research that I did last summer for the SURF program, and this was kind of a prerequisite little pre-research for my senior honors project, which is now ongoing. And I'm doing in the spring and fall semester. So I started that this semester, which is great. So the title of this project is called Future-Proofing a Workforce, the Importance of Selection and Training for Creative Thinking in Remote Employees. So the age of telecommuting. Telecommuting is essentially an arrangement in which employees do not go to work. They do not commute to a centralized place of work. And they're instead using kind of technology, computers, phones, etc., email, to work from a remote setting. And this is kind of what we all know as working from home. So there's been a very large increase in popularity of telecommuting as far as offerings from employers, and has seen in roughly 173% increase from 2005 to 2018. And with that kind of popularity and increase, along has risen the study of telecommuting and how it impacts the workplace and employers and their employees and stuff like that. So job satisfaction in relation to how often people telecommute, what are people's performance like when they work from home. The big argument is, does it actually improve work-life balance and work-family conflict? Those are very popular topics. So a concern with telecommuting is actually kind of similar to the work-family conflict one, and is that there's a growing concern with the extent to which employees are working remotely and how much people can blur the boundaries between work and family roles. So when we talk about a role, that means any kind of distinctive persona that an individual is taking on that differs, in responsibilities and characteristics from another role. So when you think about some examples, your work role is definitely different from how you are with your friends. When you're with your friends, are you acting the same way and talking about the same things and responsible for the same things as you are when you're with your church and with your church group and stuff like that? So obviously there's different kind of roles that have different responsibilities. And the things that kind of capture those roles and keep them into one lens are called boundaries. So we call these role boundaries. And it's really whatever perimeters that you set around them. And a good kind of analogy or metaphor is to think of it as like a mental fence. How do you group this role and keep it different and separate from one other group? Having said that, not all roles are afforded the luxury of having clear and distinct boundaries between them. So according to boundary theory, which is essentially a theory that addresses how one person kind of manages those mental fences. How do we differentiate between one role and the other? So according to this theory, role boundaries sit along a continuum known as the role segmentation role integration continuum. So this here on the left is a figure that kind of really paints the picture really well of what integration and segmentation means as far as the boundaries go. So when we're talking about boundaries and integration and segmentation, they're kind of determined based on the flexibility and permeability of those boundaries. So when we're talking about flexibility, that's the degree to which like physical and time-related boundaries are pliable in a role. So when we're thinking about work, if you can do your work from a different setting, like you can, for example, if you can do your work from home, and you can do it at different times in the day, that would be pretty flexible work. Permeability is the degree to which a role boundary allows one to be physically located in the role's domain, but also psychologically available to be involved at another role. So a great example that was in some other paper, I forget exactly which one it was, but is when you're at work, are you able to field phone calls from your family, or are you able to be on your phone attending to other things in your life? So that kind of thing. So higher flexibility and higher permeability between role boundaries means higher integration between the two roles. So, for example, in the figure here on the left, we're talking about the work life and the home life. If your two roles are highly integrated, that would mean that the two kind of overlap and kind of cross over each other. So working from home clearly is a concern here. So that's kind of what we get into here. So according to boundary theory, highly integrated roles have been found to be more susceptible to role blurring. So this is concerning, like I was just saying, is when you involve the work and the family roles together. So work-family role blurring, which is essentially the blurring between the two roles that we were just talking about, is a subjective cognitive phenomenon involving perceived integration, the integration that we were just talking about, of the work life and the home life. And it's situated in a highly interdependent work-family context, such as simultaneous work and family demands that can be present when people bring their paid work into the home. Now that's a really great elaborate definition, but really what it is saying is that, and as an example, when you're working from home, because those roles are more integrated with one another, you're more susceptible to those responsibilities from both roles kind of blurring together, and it may cause a disruption. And it has been found, going off of that greater perceived work-family blurring is actually correlated with higher scores of reported work-family conflict. Work-family conflict is any kind of inter-role conflict between responsibilities between the work and the family roles. So how does this apply to now, and why are we researching this? So as the COVID-19 pandemic struck, the U.S. office-based organizations, were forced to send their employees to work from home, obviously. By the end of March, 62% of working Americans have reported that they were working remotely from home, and that had doubled since the beginning of March. So clearly there was a huge movement to remote working from before the pandemic. It was already popular, but there was a very large increase. So according to boundary theory, this would then suggest that a majority of Americans during the pandemic who are working are experiencing more highly integrated work and family roles, or work and home roles, which is essentially what we were just talking about. So this would mean that they are more susceptible to work-family blurring, theoretically, and more susceptible to the consequences of work-family blurring, which, as we just saw, people are more likely to report higher scores of work-family conflict when they report higher scores of work-family blurring as well. However, though, it is clear through anecdotal evidence that the ease of remote work adjustment for every employee has been different. I'm sure you know people who are really struggling right now going through the pandemic and the remote work situation. And I'm sure you've heard some people who are completely unfazed by it. And this is actually a perfect example right here, just some anecdotal evidence from a comments section from a New York Times article that we found. You had a huge range of comments, one being, I definitely want to continue working from home most of the time, or however they phrased it. And then the other one, it says, the mental health impacts of working from home, particularly with children no longer in care, are real. So two completely opposite ends of the spectrum there, but two completely relevant and representative comments, just to kind of go ahead and show that, for certain people it is better and some people just can't handle it. And obviously children could be a huge factor in it as well. However, we think that for the purpose of this study, we're going to look at creativity as a potential moderator. So evidence is suggesting that an individual's level of creativity and ability to think creatively when problem solving is connected to resiliency, coping, psychological well-being when handling stressful situations. And that is pretty much what inspired our idea for creativity as being a potential moderator. Creativity has already seen a massive spike in the 21st century job market. It is seen as one of the most valuable traits and skills, soft skills specifically, that employers are looking for. And it is just kind of a new wave skill that employees are interested in. Why is creativity useful to employers? Well, first of all, creativity is the ability to produce novel and useful ideas. So as far as businesses go and companies, creativity has been known to fuel and sustain innovation within companies. So you think about different companies like Apple or Samsung or Google that kind of need to remain on the forefront of innovation, especially like technology companies and stuff like that. That's huge. Obviously, if you think about Google and their workplace, if you know anything about that, they very often are fostering a very creative and open environment, allowing autonomy and jobs and people to kind of do their own thing. Creativity has been known to enhance individual problem-solving skills, and through the use of divergent thinking skills, which is pretty much an ability to generate a lot of different original responses to a given problem. So pretty much, particularly, creative individuals utilize their skills best when faced with problems with no clear solution. So when there's kind of a problem where it's kind of thrown up in the air, and there's no real written down answer to how to kind of deal with this problem, then people who are more creative kind of deal better with those problems than people who are less creative, because they have those tools and those skills to help them handle it. So having said that, creative problem solving not only has the positive implications at the org level, as far as like innovation and stuff like that, but also at the individual level, 100%. Creative thinking benefits the individual in a lot of ways, but specifically for this study, we're thinking about how creativity, especially when you're thinking about solving a problem, like I was saying before, is closely connected to resiliency and coping and psychological well-being. So the ability to produce a lot of those alternatives to any open-ended problem, particularly like the one where, let's give an example, the pandemic hits. You've been working from home normally, maybe once a week, and you kind of send your kids off to school. But for the most part, you go into work in Boston, let's say. Now that the pandemic has happened, you are working from home 5 days a week. Your kids have been sent home because the schools are closed. So you're working from home and your kids are working from home. And now you have to tend to your children and their school needs and their individual needs and your personal needs while at home, and your work needs. So that's kind of a crazy open-ended problem that there's really not any clear answer to. So that's kind of a great example of why and what inspired this. So what we're pretty much saying is here that is because creativity is often seen to assist people in problem solving in these kinds of situations and allow them to be more resilient and cope better with these kinds of issues, that I'll get into the predictions in a second, sorry. That people who can think creatively will handle those situations better than somebody else. So our hypotheses and predictions for this study, again, this is a study that has yet to be completed yet, but will be completed over this summer, is that one, as employees' perception of work-family blurring increases, so will their scores on work-family conflict. So this is just our main effects here, and this is kind of what has already been proved, but we want to reprove that and use the pandemic situation and the work-from-home situation to our advantage to figure that out. And then our second hypothesis, what we were just talking about, is that an employee's creative thinking ability will reduce an employee's perception of work-family conflict when that employee experiences greater work-family blurring. So we're going to be investigating this over the summer. We have just recently found our measures for this study in particular, and we're going to be submitting all that to the IRB very soon. And we will be carrying out the study and finding out if our hypotheses are true. This is obviously a very relevant and very current topic, and we're not entirely sure how it's going to work out. It's been a very weird time, and I think a lot of people have learned a lot from this, and there's a lot of opportunity to learn more, and that's kind of essentially what we're doing here. But this project is kind of the general research and literature review that we did to kind of build our case and build our argument for this project. And now we're excited to kind of see it come to fruition and, make its way into the light and maybe get it published. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. And if you're on campus in the fall, I really would love to see you come see the findings of this study, as I'll be finishing up this project in the fall. So thank you very much again for taking the time to listen to this.